I used lucid dreaming to talk to my subconscious. And here's what I learned. So what if you could talk directly to the deepest parts of your mind, the parts that control your memories, your instincts, your deepest desires? Well, lucid dreaming can allow you to do just that. So most people think of the subconscious as this mysterious, unreachable part of the brain, but through lucid dreaming, I discovered a way to communicate with it. And the thing is, the subconscious isn't really all that mysterious. In fact, it's not exactly what you think it is. The subconscious influences us daily. It's influenced you right now to watch this video. The thoughts you're having, the emotions bubbling up, all of those come from the subconscious mind. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how I use lucid dreaming to interface with the subconscious mind. Now, it's important to bear in mind that this isn't just some mystical experience. There's hard science behind this. You'll also learn what the subconscious is and what it isn't, and why you've probably been thinking about it in the wrong way. And this is one of the most common questions asked about lucid dreaming. Can you use lucid dreams to talk to your subconscious? Can your subconscious answer questions that have been lurking in the shadows of your mind for years? But here's a question for you. If you could talk to your subconscious mind, what would you ask it? I'll also answer the really common question, which is, can you ask your subconscious to help you to have lucid dreams? The subconscious isn't mystical, but it gives you experiences that feel almost magical. Over the years, by talking to my subconscious mind, I've avoided near disasters, understood more about how my mind works, and predicted events before they've even happened. And if you want to learn how to do all of that and more, then keep watching. So let's start at the beginning. What is the subconscious mind? So let's start first with the word subconscious. What does it really mean? You see it thrown around everywhere rather willy-nilly, but it's actually not one singular thing. Subconscious refers to anything, any mental process that happens beneath conscious thinking. The term subconscious was birthed from the work of Sigmund Freud, even though he didn't really favour the term himself. Freud considered the subconscious to be a storehouse of repressed desires and fears and thoughts we didn't want to face. Freud believed that these hidden thoughts and desires, even though we weren't aware of them, greatly influenced our behaviour. Today we know that the subconscious mind is more than just a storehouse of repressed memories and desires. Even though Freud's work was groundbreaking at the time, it was very much of its time. In modern neuroscience, the word unconscious is favoured over subconscious. In fact, Freud preferred the word unconscious as well, and it actually refers to anything that is outside of conscious awareness. So the way to think of the unconscious or subconscious mind is anything your brain does that you're not doing consciously. And when you think about it, that's an awful lot. It's not just some mysterious, nebulous, abstract philosophical thoughts bubbling around your skull. It's actually everything from driving, emotional regulation, hormonal regulation, monitoring the environment, processing memories, the list goes on and on. For example, up until this very moment in time, your unconscious mind was controlling your breathing, but now that I've mentioned it, it's risen into conscious awareness and suddenly you can feel yourself breathing. So one way to think about the unconscious mind is to think of it as automated behaviours, although that's definitely far too simple. But here's an example. When you're first learning to drive, you have to think about everything consciously. It's really hard work. But as that moves into unconscious processing, it becomes really, really easy. You don't have to think about it. Another important name to remember in the study of the unconscious mind is Carl Jung. Jung disagreed with Freud and said that the subconscious or unconscious mind wasn't simply repressed desires, but it was also a storehouse of creativity, of imagination. It was the higher self. When most people talk about the subconscious or unconscious mind, they're normally drawing upon Carl Jung's ideas, this idea that there's this secretive part of the brain that knows so much more than you, that does so much more than you can do, and is just an untapped well of potential. But the important thing to remember is using terms like the unconscious or subconscious is actually really reductive. It's overly simplistic. the unconscious mind is really just a gigantic umbrella term for many, many different processes of the brain. So when you ask the question, can I talk to my subconscious mind? It's a bit like asking, can I talk to Paris? The answer is kind of, but not in the way you're thinking. From here on, I'll be using the term the unconscious mind to refer to what many people call the subconscious mind. So that leads us into dreams and the unconscious mind. So there's this common idea that dreams are a reflection of the unconscious mind, but is that absolutely true? Because when you think about it, a non-lucid dream is not entirely unconscious, else you wouldn't remember it, else it would have no impact on you. Dreams are essentially semi-conscious. So dreams aren't really the unconscious mind at play, they are more the mind at play, just operating in a different sense. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have aspects of the unconscious mind involved, just don't think of them as an entirely unconscious process. So when talking about non-lucid dreams, there are a couple of really important things to bear in mind. Firstly, you are semi-conscious, so the part of you that reflects your conscious mind is your identity in the dream world. Everything else, everything you think of as other in the dream, reflects unconscious processes, or at least some of them. But we also need to bear in mind that the unconscious mind isn't a singular entity. It's not one thing. The dream world isn't you interfacing with this singular unconscious. It's you interfacing with various different unconscious processes. Think of the unconscious mind as a jungle, as a place with many different entities, many different things existing within it. You explore the environment of the unconscious and meet individual processes in that journey. So one thing we absolutely don't know for certain is whether or not our dreams reflect all unconscious processes, and the likelihood is that they don't. It's more likely that dreams reflect certain unconscious processes. It's also really important to remember that dreams are functional. We dream for a reason. Each dream is your brain processing something different. So you're in a different part of the jungle every time you dream, and every dream character you meet, every environment you see, every narrative playing out is your unconscious mind processing something different. So let's go back to learning to drive. When you're first learning to drive, there's a lot to process, a lot of information that needs to be moved over to unconscious processing. So your dreams that consolidate those new pieces of information are likely to reflect learning to drive. However, when you're stumbling around the jungle of the unconscious mind, having these dreams, it may not appear exactly that way. Your mind has a lot of similar thoughts, similar memories to learning to drive to call upon, to incorporate that new information into. So you may have learnt a different skill in a different environment in the past, and your brain is incorporating learning to drive into that memory pattern. Or in other words, the jungle of the unconscious mind is surreal. It's weird. We don't know how our mind connects thoughts and memories, and it seems to do so in a very creative, very abstract way. Another way to think of dreams is a direct insight into the operating system of thinking. So each dream reflects a different part of the jungle of the unconscious mind, or in simple terms, each dream is a small insight into some unconscious processing. But there's a problem. In a non-lucid dream, the conscious part of the self is mostly subdued. It's almost like a drunk person stumbling through a dark jungle. But if we can wake up the conscious mind within the dream, then we can interface with these unconscious processes with more direction. So let's explore using lucid dreams to talk to the unconscious mind. So a lucid dream is a dream in which you know that you're dreaming during a dream, and your conscious mind or prefrontal cortex switch on more fully within the dream world. That allows us to make more logical and rational decisions and choices within the dream world. But those of you who think deeply may have already noticed a paradox that's rearing its little head, and that is that the conscious mind is influenced by unconscious processes. So when your conscious mind switches on within a dream, it is still being influenced by other unconscious processes, not just those that occur in the environment of the dream itself. And I mention this not to boggle the mind completely, but to make a clear point. The idea that there is a conscious and unconscious mind is a gigantic oversimplification. There is a holistic process at work here. The brain is a system that works in tandem. The many processes, including consciousness, are not independent. They are deeply connected. So let's bring this back to some solid ground and to some simple questions. Can you use lucid dreaming to talk to the unconscious mind? Well, everything we've discussed so far should hopefully make you realize that that is a question that doesn't make any sense, because the subconscious mind isn't a singular thing that can be questioned. It is a symphony of processes. And equally, the question, can I ask my unconscious mind to help me to have lucid dreams, is also founded on incorrect logic, because there is no singular unconscious to ask. So if consciousness and the unconscious mind are deeply entwined and hard to extract from one another, and there is no true unconscious mind, and consciousness is a nebulous idea that none of us can really define, how can you use lucid dreams to talk to the unconscious mind? Well, the simple answer is you don't, because that's not how the mind works. That doesn't mean that lucid dreaming can't be an incredibly useful tool for insights into how your mind works, what's going on in your mind, and all of the statements made at the beginning of this video can still hold true. So a good starting point is to recognize our tendency to oversimplify. This is something that all humans do. It's what thinking is, it's what words are, it's what maps are. We are creatures that take the complex and simplify it, and we do that to ourselves as well. We've simplified the massive complexity of the human brain into conscious and unconscious, but that's not a true reflection of reality. So first up, stop doing that. That's not going to serve you well at all. If you're thinking about your unconscious mind or subconscious mind as this thing you can talk to, then give up that idea. Think of it this way. Let's imagine you're having a dream where you're living out some anxious narrative, and you become lucid, and you ask a random dream character, what does this dream mean? But what you're actually doing is talking to a very simple process in your brain, which just represents someone you once saw that made you feel a bit nervous. What is that cluster of neurons going to tell you that is going to be deep and meaningful? And the answer is probably very little, because that's not the way to interface with your mind. The true way to do it, and the true lucid thinking, is to think bigger, to look at the bigger picture. Your dreams are reflecting concerns and thoughts and problems in your current life, and they're doing that in a way which is calling upon a wellspring of knowledge and memories from your past. When you're lucid in your dreams, act like a detective. Look at what's going on. Try to remember every single detail. Analyze the interactions between different dream characters. Analyze the environments. Try to learn what the narrative is telling you. Try to understand where it's coming from. Don't look for an external answer. Find the answer yourself using your intelligence. Lucidity is intelligence added to the dream world. Here's a common thing that many lucid dreaming teachers do. They say that if you're dreaming of a monster, you should ask the monster what it represents, and then give it a hug and integrate it. But that might be completely silly, because that monster in your dream may have simply been conjured up because the narrative of the dream required something to instill fear. What the monster actually is a bunch of neurons representing monster, which is connected to fear, which is connected to something else, which is connected to something else. It doesn't give you the key element as to what the dream's about. You need to think bigger. If you focus on individual aspects of the dream, it's a bit like focusing on an individual jigsaw puzzle piece and trying to work out what the entire picture is. It's not going to tell you much. You need to think bigger. Don't just look at the dream, look at your current life, look at your current thought patterns, look at your current daydreams. Think much bigger. But also remember that if you ask a dream character a question, the answer you get might not be true or relevant, because the dreaming mind is a very fluid, very creative thing, and consciousness and the unconscious mind are working constantly in tandem together. So you might just hear what you think you should hear. It is when you start to analyze more deeply that you can see the bigger processes, the bigger patterns going on in your life. You realize that you are a holistic system that is incredibly complicated. And to understand that, you try to work out how dreams fit into that. Dreams are complicated, and they are your mind doing some incredible mental gymnastics, and you will find insights and new information within those dreams as your brain tries to work out what it's going to do with reality. Lucid dreaming isn't a magical doorway into the unconscious realm, and the unconscious self is not some godlike entity that has answers to all your questions. Lucid dreaming is more like peering through a crack in a door and seeing how things are working behind the scenes. It gives you different insights into how your mind works. And as you start watching these processes, investigating them, doing experiments, you'll become more familiar with the holistic system of the mind. You are your unconscious mind. You just need to get to know it a little better. This is where words like intuition come from. That is you becoming more in tune with how your mind is doing its processing. This isn't about talking to your unconscious at all, because that would just be talking to yourself. This is about listening to yourself, about learning about yourself, and you do that with intelligence and deeper thinking. This isn't about looking for simplistic, satisfying answers, because in reality, there are none. Those that you get are most likely untrue, because this is really about understanding that you are more complex than you could possibly imagine, and about accepting that and trying bit by bit to unravel the mystery of you. And you almost certainly never will, but it's a fascinating ride and absolutely worth trying. And if you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy one of the videos on the screen right now. I'll see you there.